everybody. Welcome back to Grace Begins podcast. I'm Catherine Sutherland, and this is my beautiful co-host,
Kathy Cardenas. And we are excited to be here with another amazing guest.
Yes, another amazing guest. You probably have heard his music over the years. He's an incredibly successful lead singer of the band Stryper, heavenly rock, as they call themselves. They have some amazing hits. And one of the ones I love is Honestly. He's very well known for that, for Calling on You. Always Here for You. He has a new acoustic album coming out called To Hell with the Amps, and they named it that because it's his first acoustic album. So
amazing.
Please welcome Michael Sweet.
It's good to be here, and I have to have you say, if you don't mind, can you say Stryper one more time?
What did I say?
Yeah, I find it interesting when you say Stryper, you don't have an accent at all.
Oh, yes, I know. Isn't that funny? I had to learn to pronounce my R's because I'm Australian, so people wouldn't know what I was talking about. So my accent has kind of morphed over the years. So I now say things so people understand instead of saying Stryper.
Yeah, we just got back from Australia, well, not long ago, a few months back, and they say Stryper.
Yeah,
Stryper, right? And you say Stryper. So
Stryper.
I found that interesting. That's cool.
I want to make sure they understand what I'm talking about. Our listeners will be like, what is Stryper? I don't know that band.
I've become so used to your accent that I don't think I even
You
noticed.
don't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, thank you so much for giving your time this morning to join us. And we're excited to hear your story and what you have to share. So just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and your amazing career.
Well, I grew up in a musical family. I was born in 1963 in Whittier, California. And my parents were singer-songwriters. And, I always say I didn't really have a choice, although I would have made the same choice. I grew up in music, and it's all I've ever known. Became a Christian when I was 12, walked away from the church when I was between 13 and 20. Because I lived in California and I was a musician and I was playing, believe it or not, at a very early age, I was playing the club scene in Hollywood, clubs like the Whiskey and Gazzarri's and the Troubadour and all these historical clubs. And I rededicated my life when I was 20, and I am now 25. So
just a few short years.
We're the same age, and we're all the same age.
You're in the 80s time portal.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so many years ago, when I was 20, I rededicated my life, and I'm going to be 61 coming up. And it's just amazing that, we're looking back on 40 plus years of devoting our lives, our band, our music to God. And, we changed all the lyrics and just said, let's do this. And there was no looking back at all. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, it's interesting because your music is very rock. Rock is not at all Christian at that time specifically. Was that a challenging thing for you to step out in faith, really, to kind of challenge that sound and bring God into it?
It was challenging. I mean, it still is to some degree because we're a band that nobody really knows where to put us, on the mainstream secular side, on the Christian side. I mean, we don't really fit into any club or category. So people don't know what to do with us. But at the same time, we've been able to cross over and achieve success. God's really blessed the band, anointed the band. And regardless of people not knowing what to do with us, we've had an effect on many lives and seen a lot of people give their lives to Christ because of the band, the music, and the message.
Yeah, I love that. Music is very powerful. And people, I was just saying to someone the other day, you can be singing a song and not even really be aware of the lyrics and then realize, good or bad, like, oh, what am I singing here?
Yeah.
So I love that your music has kind of crossed over genres and has been able to really be considered cool because Christian music can sometimes have this image of being cheesy or hokey like the movies too, and it's such a shame because there's so much good Christian music now.
And I think taking a risk with God, you know what I mean? I think when you take the risk with him, it's just always worth it. Like I feel like it really works out when you're taking that risk. So taking that risk to bring this music was, I think, amazing. And of course, when God's in it, it's going to work out.
Fail.
Yeah,
exactly. It's so true. So true. And it's just interesting. I think what happens a lot of times, and I've seen it firsthand, so I feel like I can give an opinion on it from experience. I think in the Christian world, a lot of times things are kind of cheesy or corny a lot of times because they don't invest the right amount of money into a project to make it as good as the other projects that had the right amount of money invested, if that makes any sense. In other words, when we signed with Enigma Records, it was a mainstream label, secular label. They invested a lot of money into the band. They would never compromise what to spend on the videos or the albums. And then when I left the band in '92, I signed a deal with the Christian label called Benson at the time. They're now Provident, absorbed, and they were all about like low budgets. The talk was always, oh, we got to bring that budget down. We got to bring that budget down, and it was always about not spending enough money or what it took to make it cool and make it great to compete with all the other stuff out there. So I think that's the problem with a lot of these movies you watch or albums you hear. It's sometimes just a matter of budget, and you can't have a great product unless you're willing to spend the money. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're starting to see a little bit of a shift in that. I think, we're starting to see with Angel Studios and other companies, it's starting to take that chance, and they're seeing great success. Sound of Freedom was a huge success. Yes. So yeah, it's exciting to see that starting to shift. I think people are looking for something more wholesome and something more heartfelt. We started to, in the music industry and film, we've started to see a lot of recycling old stories and not a lot of creativity. So it's really nice to see people stretching in the faith-based world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's great. And you are seeing more and more higher quality movies and come out, like this Unsung Hero movie with the Smallbone family. I went to the premiere and saw that, and it's a really good movie. I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah. Because I'll be honest, when my wife says, "Hey, let's watch this faith-based movie," I'm like, do we have to?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just being honest, because a lot of times, it's a great story and a great motive behind it, obviously, but it's just, not usually done well. And it's kind of hard to watch sometimes. But Unsung Hero, it proved me wrong. And there are some great movies out there. And I do think the tables are turning on that for sure.
Yes. So just to switch gears a little bit, you mentioned that you became a believer when you were 12. Was your family believers? Did you find God in your journey on your own? How did that happen? How did you find him?
It was really interesting how we came to know Christ. We basically started watching Jimmy Swaggart on television. Of all things, who could imagine, this band Stryper, when we were early on, young lads, here we are watching Jimmy Swaggart. And we started watching Jimmy, and then we watched him again the following week, and then again the following week. And we were really drawn to him because, his words spoke to us, but his music spoke to us even more, because he sounded like Elvis Presley. And I grew up in a home that loved Elvis Presley. My dad, absolutely, Elvis was his biggest influence, and my dad was a singer songwriter as well. So I grew up around Elvis and hearing Elvis every day in and day out. So when we heard Jimmy sing, we thought, oh wow, he sounds kind of like Elvis, this is cool. And then we heard his words and heard him preach, and it was like, oh, this is incredible. And it really moved on us, and we literally became Christians through Jimmy Swaggart, through the television. Then we got involved in a Southern Baptist church locally, and went to church. And then I kind of fell away from church not long after that, and got caught up in the whole Hollywood club scene. And it kind of grew up really fast, and did a lot of things I'm not proud of. But like I said earlier on, I rededicated my life when I was 20, and there's been no looking back for me. So Jimmy Swaggart is to blame for that.
Go Jimmy.
I forgot about Jimmy. That was so funny. It was such a flashback right there to childhood. Yeah.
What was the turning point that that brought you back to God? So, obviously, you're in the music industry. There's a lot, it's a fast-paced life. There's a lot of temptation and a lot of influences around you that are going to pull you as far from God as possible. How did you find your way back to him in that?
Well, I mean, we were basically a band called Rock's Regime. And we were in a garage in La Mirada, California, across from Biola University. And we were playing and writing songs and kind of honing our craft and figuring things out. And we had a friend come in the studio that we knew in the world, prior to that moment. And you could see this glow upon him and a sparkle in his eyes. And he came in and he started talking to us about God. Wow. And telling us how God had changed his life. And he was a fellow musician and involved in all kinds of stuff, prior to that made us, kind of blew us away. Like, whoa, you? Okay. You're a Christian? Wow. It was pretty eye-opening. And then, God started knocking on our hearts' doors at that moment. And he was already in our hearts, but we weren't living for Christ at all. And Kenny Metcalf was used to really speak to us. And then another guy by the name of Michael Guido was heavily used to influence us and speak to us and encourage us. And not long after the meeting of Kenny Metcalf and Michael Guido, I just started rewriting all the lyrics. I just did it. I woke up one morning, I'm like, that's it. I'm doing it. Enough of this nonsense. And I'm going to change my path here. And I did. And the other guys followed suit. My brother was like, yeah, I'm on board. Oz, our guitar player, he grew up in a Pentecostal family. His mom, he used to listen to Black Sabbath, and his mom would put oil on his albums and throw them out the window. Trying to turn him around. And he was a little more hesitant about it, but he knew about God, and God was knocking on his heart. And then our bass player, once we eventually found the right bass player, he had left his band Stormer because he became a Christian. His dad was a minister. So it was a powerful movement that God was putting together. And we didn't even know what he was doing. It was just happening before we even knew it. And that's how God works. And then we became Stryper, and we just devoted every song, every lyric to God. We started tossing out Bibles. New Testament Bibles, and they were being left all over the floor. So then we put Stryper stickers on them, and then none were left ever since.
Got to do what you got to do.
Bibles. Yeah, it's pretty incredible what happened, what God did with the band. Amazing.
Yeah. I just want to say, so we had a past guest that talked about destiny helpers, right? God's destiny helpers along the way. And I love it when people share that. And it sounds like these two men were your destiny helpers. Like God put them in your path. That gives me chills. God put them in your path to take you to this next place. And so that's just one of my favorite things to hear about those destiny helpers. And you got to look back and you got to be so thankful for that moment, with that person, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And still to this day, we're in contact with Kenny. He used to play in the band early on. He was our keyboard player, became our keyboard player. And then Michael Guido went on to be basically like a rock and roll pastor. Like he pastors all the bands that travel, and from DC Talk to Michael W. Smith to Stryper to so many bands. And he's still our pastor to this day. And he comes out with us and hangs with us on occasion. And just he's there to kind of encourage us and inspire us,
Yeah.
And now you get to be destiny helpers to all the young musicians coming behind you as well, and showing how much bigger God's plan was than yours was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like who knows?
And I look back on all the years and all the stories and meeting people on a daily basis to this day whose lives have been altered. And, it's one thing when someone says, I became a Christian because of your music and your message, but it's another thing when they tell you, I'm the pastor of a mega church and because of you guys. And it's like, that's the stuff that really blows your mind.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I also just was reflecting on how God found you at such a young age and rescued you from a lot of heartache and misery. There's other people. I was actually recently listening to the bassist from Korn who is recently saved, and what he had to go through. I mean, God had to bring him to his knees to rescue him, and I'm grateful you didn't have to have that experience. He found you at 20, at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back on that and I think it is pretty miraculous. I mean, because all of my peers, all the bands at the time that we were playing with, and I was outside smoking Sherman cigarettes with and having drinks with, and bands like Rat and Motley Crue and Wasp, and we came up at the same time they came up, and we were all playing. They'd be at the Whiskey, and we'd be at Kazari's, and the other band would be at the Troubadour, and we would walk to see each other, and hang out. And so it's pretty interesting. I could have very easily have gone down a different path and not sitting here talking to you. It is amazing, God's grace and mercy, and how his hand was upon everything.
Yeah. And I was thinking about, when you're talking, I was thinking about that. I watched an interview recently with Carrie Underwood, and she was saying, somebody asked her, wasn't that a risk? Weren't you scared to put your first song out talking about Jesus, because that Jesus Take the Wheel song? And she's like, no, it would have been worse for me not to. Like, I had to put him first in that. I thought that was really neat. Like, just the risk I'm going to take has to have him on board if I'm going to do this. And so it makes me think of, what you're saying a little bit too. Like, there's a reward in that risk when you trust him.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. And the hardest part is trusting him. I mean, it's human nature not to. We're emotional beings, and a lot of times we put our emotions first. Our emotions rule us and control us. So it's really hard to trust God because of that. Because you have, you want to put your faith in God, but then you're telling yourself, like, but it's not going to work out. And then you pray, and people pray for you and say, yes, it is. Believe, have faith, trust God. It's going to work out. And then an hour later, you're telling yourself, God, it's not going to work out. It's just how we're built.
Yeah.
It's a tug of war. But it's so important that's why it's important to surround ourselves with people of the same mind. It's very important.
Yeah. And I think what's been something that just going on in my life recently has been, and what keeps coming to me, is there's a difference between believing in God and believing God, right? Like believing him that he's going to do it, trusting him that he's going to take care of you when you put all your faith in him. With that blind, it's always blind faith with him, because you really don't know. You're really walking. That's where you got to have that relationship and trust him that he's going to get you to the other side of whatever it is that you can't see. And that's hard.
It's so true. And we all are faced with things that really bring us to our knees and put that trust to test. And we will be, if we haven't already, because as we get older, things happen. We get curveballs thrown our way. We don't know how to catch those curveballs. And, I had a couple of situations with myself in the past few years. I had a retinal detachment. And I had to have surgery, and there were complications from it. It redetached. I had to have another surgery, and then another surgery. And I thought, basically, okay, I'm going to be blind. This eye is my bad eye, and this eye had 2 tears. So I just felt like, okay, I'm just going blind all of a sudden. Couldn't find any family that had the same condition. Couldn't understand why, but I learned a lot through it, and somehow I drew closer to God through that. And then just recently, thyroid cancer. I had my thyroid removed. As a singer, that was pretty weird.
Yes.
And I'm still coming back from that. But I mean, my point is, these things happen. And when they do happen, a lot of times we tend to blame God. Like, why, God? Why? How could you do this? And it's like, he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's just life.
Yeah.
This is what we have to go through and face because of, biblically speaking, we all know why. Yeah. And we just have to trust God and trust that he's got a plan, and we're going to get through the storm.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's really important to reflect back and even write things down so that you can see where he has been in that journey and how he's used it to bring you to where you are.
Yeah.
It's like that saying in James about consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. And I always used to read that and think, joy, how am I supposed to enjoy suffering? But it's the process that he asks us to just surrender to him, and you'll see that reward on the other side if you really do let him hold your hand through that.
Yeah,
And it's
so true. Love it. And that's it right there. And but it's hard. It's
yeah.
it's easier said than done, because
Yes.
we're flesh and blood, and we get caught up, like I said, with those emotions, and we can feel one way one moment and then read something or see something and feel another way another moment. And that's just, it's that constant tug of war with ourselves. And it's just, that's why it's so important to stay as rooted in the word, as rooted in your walk with Christ, whether it's with friends, books, trying to stay edified, as much as you can. And that's the tricky part, living in this world.
Yeah. And I think that's, you made a good point about making sure your faith is strengthened, because when that trial comes, and they're always going to come, that you're not wavering on that faith, that you're not running from God. Instead, that's the first person you're running to. You're not wanting to blame him. And we've talked about this. I'm a person that's always believed, and I never get angry with God. And like you were saying, you don't get angry with him, but so many people do. And it's like, I don't understand that, but I know that that's where my faith is. I know he loves me. I know he only wants good for me and doesn't want to deliberately hurt me, just like our own children. We don't want to hurt our own children. We only want the best for them. And so I think that's just an amazing reminder of just making sure your faith is constantly strengthened, and reading your scriptures and just doing those things to make sure you're prepared spiritually when the battle comes.
So true. It's so true. And I'm one of those guys, the way I'm built, I keep moving forward through adversity, whatever it may be. I just kind of pick up. Now, maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. But it's just how I'm built, how I'm made. There have been times when I've gotten really angry at God and literally cursed God as much as you could imagine. My wife, Kyle, of almost 23 years, she had cancer and she passed. And when she was going through that, I was pissed. I'm not going to lie. And I was very angry at God, because I just couldn't understand, because her of all people, I couldn't understand why she would have to suffer like that. But I realized, I learned a lot through that. And I realized so much. And when she passed, I just kept moving forward. Like, I felt for about a day or two, like just hiding with the curtains drawn. And then I booked a tour. I called the agent and I said, let's book a tour. And within a few months, I was out touring. People were like, you're not ready to tour. I'm like, yeah, I am ready to tour. And that's what I had to do to get through it. But you got to keep moving forward, and you just have to put your trust in God, and He's going to get you through it, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
Do you feel that that's a challenge for you because you're on a platform, a Christian platform? People look to you and say, oh, how's he going to handle this? Or what's he going to do now? Do you ever feel that weight and pressure on you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the key is, focusing your own personal walk on Christ. Okay. So just focusing that, ignore other people. Like we as Christians tend to want to look at others and judge them and, come down on them. But yet we don't acknowledge often our dirt in our closets. We all have filthy closets that literally we will be cleaning out for a lifetime. And we need to focus on that. But I think that it's important to really just stay in tune with yourself and stay in tune with Christ, and just keep that deep-rooted personal relationship going. And, and just start it with the prayer. Start your day with the prayer every day, even if it's a 30-second prayer. End your day with the prayer every day. If you just do little things like that, it's going to be a lot easier to get through life.
Yeah, gosh, it's so true. Like I often reflect on that in seeing people that do not have any faith and seeing that how they handle adversity as opposed to people that it's like, how do you do that? How do you have the strength to get through it without having God to lean on? And I think that's why it's so important, and why we created this platform is it's so important for people to hear like the underbelly of people's stories, so they can see like, no, I'm broken just like you, but God got me through this. He's the one that carried me, just like the Footprints poem. You know?
Yes.
We're not promised a life without trial and adversity.
Well, yeah, it's like he's our hope, right? And that's when somebody who doesn't have God, I'm like, how do you not have hope at the end of the day? Hope that you're going to go to heaven, hope that it's going to work out. You just are out there just flopping around. I would go crazy. Like my faith is what I'm rooted in, you know, and that's what anchors me, and to not get completely crazy. And there was a period in my life where I wasn't anchored with him. And we mentioned that before, and I was all over the place. I was stressed about everything. It was now I'm just like, God's got it. God's got it. I don't stress anymore at all. It's all going to work out. It always works out. He always makes sure it works out. And so having that hope is amazing, and it's hard for people who don't. I don't get it either.
Absolutely. You guys, I'm trying not to laugh. We're in a deep, serious conversation, and I'm getting these pop-ups of emails that I'm getting, junk mail. And I just got one about being constipated. And
I'm good to keep a straight face.
That's the reality check of life.
Yeah, wow. Right? Wow.
Yeah. Having clean bowels is very important.
Yes, clean soul, clean bowels. There you go. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay, so tell us about how your acoustic album came about and what inspired that, and about this 40th album and anniversary tour you have coming up.
Well, yeah, the acoustic album has been in the works, believe it or not, for almost 7 years.
Wow.
And the reason why is because we started it with our former bass player, and we parted ways with him. And we have a new bass player now, have for 5-6 years, Perry Richardson, who played in the band Firehouse. And we decided that it would make sense to have Perry on this album. So it took us time to get back in the studio and re-record and, do all that stuff. We finally were able to finish that, and then we wanted to release it properly. So we did so on our own. Then we did a deal. It's being re-released. It wasn't called Acousticized. Now it's called To Hell with the Amps. We just kind of thought it'd be funny to play off of our To Hell with the Devil album in '86. And, it's interesting, Stryper, you wouldn't think Stryper would be able to pull off an acoustic album because we're more of a hard rock metal band, but it works. It really works. And I think the reason why it works is because we have 2 guitar players in the band, so we can kind of fill in properly with the guitars. And then we have 3 singers in the band. So we have 3-part harmonies going on. So when we strip it down acoustically, it somehow works, oddly enough. And a lot of the songs, believe it or not, as the songwriter, a lot of these songs I wrote on acoustic guitar back in the early days. And people don't know that, but it's true, because it's the quickest thing to grab when you have an idea. Oh, there's my acoustic, and I'll write songs on acoustic all the time.
You have such a beautiful voice. I know you sing heavy metal, but the quality of your voice is so beautiful. So I'm really excited to hear it. I'm really excited to hear it.
I always joke about my voice. You have to have an acquired taste to get my voice. I have a very unique way of singing,
Yes.
I grew up, my dad would listen from everything from Pavarotti to Elvis to Creedence Clearwater Revival to all the old classic country, and then move into like Bad Company and into heavier stuff at the time. So I kind of grew up with this very eclectic mix of music, and I think it rubbed off on me vocally. You
have an amazing
heavy
range.
Like vibrato, chesty style of singing.
Yes, but a huge range as well. It's pretty amazing. Did you enjoy the process of doing the acoustic album? Is it, well,
I
was
did.
it very
I
different for
love
you?
it. Oh yeah, I love it. I love it. And I've been out playing acoustic solo gigs for probably 12, 13 years. The first time I did it, I was so nervous because I felt like, oh my gosh, how's this going to work? And you're under the microscope. You have nothing to hide behind. And to do it with the band was incredible. It was next level. And when we went in and actually did it and recorded it, it was wonderful. I loved it. And I enjoy listening to the album as well, because it's just a little bit of a breath of fresh air and a breather from the Marshalls or Mesa Boogie amps turned to 11. It's kind of nice.
Do you collaborate with a lot of people? I know you have your song with for King and Country. Do you enjoy collaborating with other bands? And because you have such a core unit with your brother being part of your band, and you've been friends and band members for such a long time. How is that working with other people? Because it's such a different vibe between you.
Yeah, it is. It's true. I love it. I mean, I love collaborating with other people, and it kind of opens your mind, to new ideas, new things. And I love that. I love the challenge of it. And, I have a lot of opportunities that come my way, and I have to pass on them because I have to feel led to do it. For example, there's a project I'm a part of called Sunbomb with Tracy Guns, who used to be the original guitar player for Guns N' Roses.
Wow.
He was the Guns part, and Axl was the Roses part. And he and I did a project called Sunbomb, and someone was writing the lyrics, and I was a little skeptical about that. And sure enough, they sent me the first lyric. And my wife and I, Sunday morning, we were in bed hanging out, watching Phantom Gourmet, and I open up the lyric and I'm reading it, and it was called Burning Witches. And I'm like, is this April Fool's? Is somebody pulling a joke on me here? I'm like, and I'm reading these lyrics thinking, this is just ridiculous. And I wrote an email saying, guys, what I stand for. I can't alienate my fan base, nor would I want to do that. And I'm a man of faith, and I can't sing these lyrics. These lyrics have to be rewritten. And so I've had to take a stand many times and say no to many things, and that I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, it's great working with other people, to answer your question.
Yeah, and you actually sang for Boston too. Was reading in your bio. Yeah,
I did. I was asked back in 2007 when my wife was ill at the time. I wrote something about Brad Delp, the original singer, who took his life. And I wrote something online about what he meant to me, and how much he influenced me. And Tom's wife, Kim, read it, reached out to management and asked that I would come and sing a song at what was going to be their last show, a benefit show for Brad, celebration show here in Boston. And I said, of course. They had like Ann Wilson coming and Sammy Hagar, Mickey Thomas, all these guys. And it wound up turning into some of the singers dropping out and them asking me to sing their songs. So I went and learned guitar and sang More Than a Feeling and Peace of Mind and Rock and Roll Band and Long Time, all these songs.
Yeah.
And then after that show, Tom came backstage, Tom Scholz, the leader, and he said, this went so well, we want to keep going, and we want you to join the band. And I did. It was pretty surreal.
Yeah, like a full circle moment for you, growing up on their music. And that's
really
amazing.
Was, because that first Boston album was very influential for me. First album I bought on mine.
Oh, that's so cool. I love seeing those kind of moments. And I'm sure, you again, God used you in in secular music to touch so many lives, which I just love.
Well, I don't compromise. I'm always, or at least I hope I am, an example. And, but yet at the same time, I'm not there beating people over the head with the Bible, saying, hey, let's talk. You need to accept Jesus right now. And I met King Diamond recently, who's a renowned Satanist. artist, singer, and we had a great conversation, and people wigged out. I posted a picture of him, and people were like, how can you sit there and talk to this guy? He's a Satanist. I'm like, how can I not? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's so crazy to me, the mentality sometimes.
There's so much more work that can be done, I think, through example, right, than the pounding of the Bible on the head, right? Like, people will see there's something different. They're going to, the respect you have, and that's what Christ asks, is to love one another. You know, we're all about to love one another, and people lose sight of that because it's not what they think it should be. And that's really sad. So I think that's amazing that you're such a great example. That, I mean, think about it, down the road, if he chooses to turn his life over to Christ, he's probably going to call you first because you're the guy that's, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, for sure. Who knows? And it's true. But I mean, it was funny. So many of the comments were like, did you share Jesus with them? You know, and I respect that thought, but I talked to him for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was our first meeting. I mean, it's like there's a time and a place, and we all have to understand that, and know when that time and place is. You don't just rush in like a bull in the china shop and start smashing glass. You know, you can't do it like that. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, people testimony again is always so much more meaningful to people than to just quote the Bible at them. Like, you'll get to that. It'll get to that where you got to just say, God, just use me today. How are you going to use me?
Exactly.
And people do see a difference on you. They see him and the way you treat others. When you truly have that, there's a lot of people that claim to come in his name that are not doing what God has asked us to do. So
absolutely. And it's so true. And the tricky part is following through with that. Now, something that I'm curious about, I've got a feeling, maybe I'm wrong, that you two sing.
I do. Yes.
I do not. And I think people will appreciate that, to not do that publicly. Again, I made that mistake one time. Yeah.
I was going to say, can you guys sing me a little song right now?
Oh, come on, Kathy. You're going to regret asking that. Well, I can't sing you something. I sing in the car, in the shower. That's about it. Yeah.
The pressure.
That's about...
What can I don't even.
I was half right.
Yeah, you were half. Yeah, I do sing, just not for others. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, a singer's asking me to sing.
Oh, right. I know. Sing Ann Wilson. You mentioned Ann Wilson. I just got to meet her recently, briefly, and I just, another great example of somebody who's just courageous enough to just sing for God, and it's just beautiful. I love her music.
Let my Jesus change your life.
Oh, yeah. See,
hallelujah.
Nice.
We'll give it all to her.
Now, do you have music recorded and released?
No, I grew up in Australia, obviously. I went to performing arts school, so I did a lot of musicals and theatre in Australia.
Wow.
And then I did have a little band briefly, but it didn't work out. It just kind of fell apart. But yeah, I used to do a lot of musicals and things like that.
Maybe you can put her on your next album. Yeah, put her on your next album. Yeah. He's like, okay, that was a little pressure.
I love it. You know, forming a band and putting together a band is easier said than done. People always, compare it to a marriage. It's very similar. You know, you're traveling with these guys. You're living on a bus with these guys. You're sharing hotel rooms with these guys, and a lot of times you have to have extra patience when you're with everyone in the band. So yeah, it's tricky doing that. And then you got to find people who are like-minded, people who are serious about what they do. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's a tough business. Well, so is acting. I think anything in this field is challenging, and to stay faithful in that too is a challenge. So yeah, we need more Michael Sweets in the world.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. I so appreciate you.
And where can people find you?
Yes.
Yeah, where can people find you and follow you and hear all of your music?
You can, we're on, obviously, all over social media. We're on Instagram, Michael Sweet and Stryper. We are on Facebook, of course, Michael Sweet and Stryper. And we are on what is now X, And we have website, michaelsweet.com and Stryper.com.
Yes.
And people can, usually through the website, that's where they can, there's links to, all of our latest releases and
tours and
T-shirts, merchandise, tour dates, all that stuff. But we're starting the tour coming up. I leave in a week, a little over a week. I've got a lot to work out and figure out here. I find as I'm getting older, I'm needing to use my phone or an iPad for lyrics with a little teleprompter. And I don't like doing that, but boy, I'm having to do a lot more lately. I'll tell you that.
The brain fog.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's happened to the best of us. Yeah.
And then you start your worldwide tour in the fall, right? You're doing a worldwide tour as well as the national one.
Yeah, I have an album, the acoustic album coming out. It's out digitally, but it's coming out. Physical copies are coming out soon through Flatiron. That's called To Hell with the Amps. Then I have another album coming out with Sun Mom, Tracy Guns. That's coming out in June. And then Stryper has an album coming out in September.
Okay.
And we're going to be celebrating our 40-year anniversary this year, technically 40 years. And we are supporting that new album when we go out in September.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. If you are interested in seeing Stryper perform and hearing their new music, you can check out those links. We'll make sure we put them below. And thank you so much, Michael. It's been an absolute joy speaking to you.
Yes,
thank you guys. I appreciate the time. I think you two did a fantastic job. You should be very proud. And all the best to you as you guys continue down this road interviewing more people. And thanks for having me. It's been a joy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
See you all later.
Bye.
Bye.
And we will see you next time on Grace Begins. Bye.